So I'm going to demonstrate that. But basically, what I'm going to do today is I have a slide, 3 or 4 slides, basically, just to talk a little bit about the origin of the flute and some information about some past flautists and so on. And then towards the end, I have a brief demo where I will show a few of the techniques that I have learned with my limited experience. So one other thing I would like to add before going forward is, feel free to interrupt if you have any questions or if you have any comments about anything. I mean, I think it's okay to interrupt as long as it doesn't impact the way the whole audio video piece works. Otherwise, I think it's just probably good to make it interactive as we go. Okay. So I'm not going to mix up the demo and the slides. So I'm going to first go to the slides and talk a little bit about a few things there. If you find that interesting, then I'll move to the flute, close down the PowerPoint, and then show you a few things. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes,
Okay.
I can see it.
My screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start with this very brief history of the flute. So flute seems to have been the very first musical instrument known to man or humankind. From prehistoric times, humans were fascinated by the sounds that could be made by hollow tubes. And they also seem to have realized very early that by varying the length of the column of air in these tubes, you could produce different musical sounds. So I have 3 different examples here from archaeological excavations. The first one is from Neanderthal times. It's about 60,000 years old. It's a bone flute. I have provided a link here that will give you some more information about it. I'm not going to go into those, but just for you to look up after this when you have the slides with you. The second one actually is a little bit more, seems to be a little bit more complete. It's about 40,000 years old. This one is made of the ivory of a mammoth tusk. And the third one actually is also about 40,000 years old. And this is made of a bone of a vulture, the radius of a vulture, it's a vulture wing. And I'm here going to take a quick break. I'm going to show an embedded video here. This actually is an archaeologist. What he did was he made a replica of this that was found in the excavations. And you can see him actually playing a little tune with this. Let me know if you can hear. If you
You'll have to share your, hold on, you'll have to pause it and you'll have to set up some settings to share a video on Discord. Do you have a few seconds? You want to go through that really quick?
Yeah, I thought it was working yesterday. We tried this. Yeah, go ahead.
Go to the settings itself on the left bottom. I mean, right bottom. Yeah, there. Yep.
Yep.
And then go down to, scroll down all the way till you get to activity status.
Yep.
And then here you say add it. You see that? Not seeing your game, add it.
Yeah.
Yep. And then select the Chrome browser, whichever browser you have it on, probably Chrome. Yeah. And then say add game. Okay, now when you share, you want to share the application and not the screen itself, and then it should play the sound.
Okay. Better?
Yes.
One of the most important finds we made in this cave was a very tiny flute made out of the radius of a vulture. Astonishing on this flute is that it is pentatonic. And this is the same tonality we are used to hear today. And if you like, I'll try to play some small tunes for you. And when I first reconstructed the instrument, tried to play some tunes, I came across these ones. Sounds a little bit like Star Spangled Banner.
Okay, do I have to share this again, or are you able to see my screen now?
Sorry,
Can
I
you
can
see
see
my screen?
everything. I can see your Chrome browser, but I can't see your PowerPoint. You'll have to switch back to screen sharing
Oh,
your PowerPoint.
I see.
Yeah, sorry, it's not the most intuitive.
Okay, better?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to fast forward several centuries, and then over time, flutes evolved in the West. They came to be made of brass and other metal tubes. And then the modern Western flute that is played in the concerts today was invented by Theobald Boehm. It was patented in 1847. There are other improvements to this, but by and large, I think that remains the design that was done by this gentleman seems to be the basis of what's out there today. Meanwhile, the Indian flute also evolved, and this continued to be made of bamboo. And the first Carnatic flautist to perform on stage as a flute soloist was one Sharaba Shastri. He lived from 1872 to 1904. And then his foremost student, his name was Sanjeev Rao, Palladam Sanjeev Rao. He lived from 82 to 62. He actually spent most of his lifetime trying to promote the flute as a solo instrument. But for the flute or any instrument to be accepted as a legitimate solo instrument, it really has to mimic the human voice as closely as possible, because that's the only way you can bring out all the melodic nuances of Carnatic music. Right? So his playing style was quite staccato, and it wasn't quite as acceptable to the audience when compared to vocal music. So even though he was hailed as a leading flute player of his time, the instrument was still mostly used as a dance accompaniment. Then in 1934-33, the T.R. Mahalingam, or more popularly Mali, as he was known more popularly, he came on the scene and he changed everything. So this is his full name, Thirurai Marudur Ramaswamy Mahalingam, is known as again Flute Mali. He was born in 1926, and he was one of 6 siblings. And he started Carnatic music lessons at an early age, vocal. So he, out of the 6 siblings, he had a brother who was actually learning flute. The same teacher also taught flute and harmonium, but his main thing was vocal music. And his Mali was completely forbidden to play the flute because he was of frail health, and his father thought that playing the flute and blowing the air would be very deleterious to his health. So he was not allowed to play the flute. So he learned secretively because he had access to a flute, and then one day he was really literally caught playing the flute. But by the time he was caught, he was really so good that his teacher has convinced his father to say, that his Mali had a future in flute playing, and he should be allowed to pursue the flute. So that's how he really started playing flute. And so as soon as they decided that he was going to pursue flute as a career, they said, okay, who is the best person to teach him? Who else? Palladam Sanjeev Rao was the person that they identified as the person to teach him. So the anecdote was that they took him to Sanjeev Rao, And then, as is typical, the would-be teacher asked the student to play something, and he played this Viriboni Varnam in Bhairavi Ragam. Now, as some of you know, the beauty is really enhanced by all the gamagas in that. And after Mali played that, Sanjeev Rao was so he just left the room in a huff, went into his room and closed the door and never showed up again. Apparently, he was so jealous of the way Mali had played that Varnam. Nobody had ever played that before in that fashion. So that was I don't know how true it is. I've seen that anecdote in multiple places on the internet. I'm sure there's some truth to that. Anyway, Mali was just 7 when he made his flute debut. This was in 1933 at the Tyagaraja Festival in Mylapore, Chennai. So Mylapore, Chennai is, what New York is to Broadway. So if you're making your Broadway debut in New York, imagine that. So he completely mesmerized the audience. He produced music that matched the highest standards of vocal quality. Among the audience, there were some two greats of those times. Masiri Subramania Iyer and Parur Sundaram were among the audience. They immediately honored him with shawl and other things. And I just put a poster here. This is the poster that was used to advertise his concert at the time. So key elements of Mali's technique. So first thing was he used something called cross fingering. And when you go to the flute, I'll try to show what that is. To the limited ability I have, I can show you what the cross fingering technique is. Earlier it was something called parallel fingering. He also changed the grip. The grip that was used until that time was different, and he changed the grip to something different. And then the eighth hole, it's not clear whether he actually invented the eighth hole or the eighth hole was already there, but he always used the eighth hole flute. Prior to that, it was a 6-hole flute. Hindustani music, by the way, is still played on a 6-hole flute, and I'll show that also later on. Then the other thing about his playing technique was he first learned vocal music. So he knew what he had to actually aspire for when he actually picked up the flute. He also had observed a lot of these Nadaswaram players. Nadaswaram is another South Indian instrument. It's played in temples and on religious occasions. The fingering technique for Nadaswaram is also very sophisticated. They have multiple holes beyond just the tone holes. They used to produce different gamakas. So he actually observed them very carefully, and he adapted some of those techniques into flute playing, and all this at a very young age. So I have here 2 pieces. We don't have any recording, obviously, of Sanjeev of the first player, but Sanjeev Rao, some recordings do exist. Just a handful exist, and I was able to get one recording of Sanjeev Rao, again, all these from the internet, as well as we have Mali's version. So basically, this is the Kambodi Kriti, Every Mata. I'm going to play for you a piece, a small excerpt from Sanjeev Rao's playing, and then we'll have Mali playing the same Kriti. These are very old recordings, so the recording quality is pretty bad. But what I would like you to watch for is, even though both have a lot of gamakas, there is a cut when you listen to Sanjeev Rao's version. So see if you can pay attention to that in spite of all the background noise in the recording.
You're going to have to do the same thing again.
I may have to switch again, right?
Yes, you're going to have to switch again. Correct.
Watch very closely.
Okay, able to hear? See?
Yes.
So nothing really bad about it. He was obviously he was the leading player of those times, so it still sounds pretty good. Okay, so I'll stop there, and When you have the link, you can listen more. I'm going to go back and play the other one. Okay, are you able to hear this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the alapana here, the introduction to the piece. The actual piece starts here. Okay, I'll stop that there. Let me go back to sharing. So I hope you were able to appreciate the difference there.
You have to go back and switch to share screen. Oh, there you go. Cool.
Yep.
I can see it.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to change gears a little bit here. So we are going to talk a little bit about the flute. I'm going to talk through this, and then after this, I can actually show it to you after I switch to my video and turn off the PowerPoint. So these bamboo flutes, they're made of naturally grown bamboo. One side is sealed off by a natural node of the bamboo. The other side is open. As I said earlier, Carnatic flute has 8 holes. Hindustani flute typically has 6 holes, and they have added a 7th hole. It's been there for some time. So 6 or 7 holes, either one works. I don't really know the difference in terms of what the extra hole does, but I generally read that it helps to produce some better gamakas with the madhyamam swara. And then, so the other thing is flute. This is pretty much true for all the professional quality concert type flutes. They're all transfers as opposed to playing straight. Transfers meaning they're played on the side. And I don't know the physics behind it, but in general, this produces more melodious and better tonal control. And then the other thing about the bamboo flute or the bamboo flute is that the pitch is determined at the time it is made. The pitch depends on the length, the diameter, and the thickness of the bamboo. So yeah, so the just the other advantage of flute, it's highly portable. There's no tuning required. And I know that for some instruments, if you're a left-handed player, you've got to buy a different structure. The instrument has to be slightly different. So in the case of flute, again, doesn't matter whether you're left-handed or right-handed. You just change the side at which you blow, and the side at which you keep your tune holes, and you're pretty good to go with the same instrument. I also have another video clipping here of how the bamboo flute is made. I thought you will find this interesting. I'm going to switch again to a video. Bear with me.
Or
Able
you're
to see?
proofreading your
Good.
thesis one
Yes.
last time before.
Kala, you're good?
Yes, I can hear you. And I can see it,
And you
rather.
can see the
Yeah.
video, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this is in Malayalam. By the way, the reason it's in Malayalam is because two parts of the country of India where these particular bamboo trees grow. One is in Kerala, the other is in Assam. A lot of the wood from Assam, bamboo from Assam, is used in Hindustani flutes, and for the South Indian Carnatic flute, most of these come from Kerala. And I looked around. Most of the videos, they seem to be in Malayalam. So I'm just going to give you the very basic points of this video, but I think it'll be interesting to see how the flute is actually made.
അതിനുശേഷം എണ്ണ പുരട്ടി അതിന് ടെമ്പറേച്ചർ ഓരോ ബാംബൂവിനും താങ്ങാൻ കഴിയുന്ന രീതിയിലുള്ള ടെമ്പറേച്ചർ കൊടുത്ത് അതിനെ ഒന്നുകൂടെ അതിനെ നാച്ചുറലാക്കിയിട്ട് എടുക്കുക. അതിനുശേഷം ഓരോ ബാംബൂവിന് അനുസൃതമായ രീതിയിൽ എത്ര ശ്രുതി കിട്ടും ഒരു കുഴൽ ഒരു കഷ്ണം പീസിൽ നിന്നിട്ട് ഏത് ശ്രുതിക്കുള്ള കുഴൽ കിട്ടും എന്നുള്ള കാൽക്കുലേഷനിൽ അതിനെ ഹോള് നിർണ്ണയിക്കണം. ആ ഹോള് നിർണ്ണയിക്കുന്നത് ആണ് വലിയൊരു പണി. ആ ഹോള് അല്പസ്വല്പം വ്യത്യാസം വന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ മൊത്തം ശ്രുതി ഔട്ടായിരുന്നു.
So what he's doing is first the step was to clean the bamboo in hot water. Then he heats up to a temperature to get rid of some of the moisture in the bamboo. Then he's marking the place where the holes are to be made. He's saying that's a very important step because they are not marked correctly, or in the next step, as he's going to show you, the holes are made using a hot iron rod.
ശ്രദ്ധിച്ച് നിർണയിച്ച് ഡയമെൻഷൻ കൊടുത്ത് അതിനെ ഹോള് ഇടണം.
സ്വരസ്ഥാനങ്ങളും സ്വരമാധുരിയും നിജപ്പെടുത്തുന്നത് ക്ഷമയുടെയും അർപ്പണത്തിൻ്റെയും മറ്റൊരു സംഗീതമാണ്.
നാലാമത്തെ പ്രവൃത്തി എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിൽ അതിനെ വീണ്ടും എടുത്ത് കഴുകി വൃത്തിയാക്കി ഫിനിഷ് ചെയ്ത് ശ്രുതി വെച്ച് ചെക്ക് ചെയ്ത് വീണ്ടും ശ്രുതിയിലേക്ക് വരുന്നുണ്ടോ വരുന്നില്ലേ എന്ന് നോക്കി വീണ്ടും അതിലേക്ക് ശ്രുതിയിലേക്ക് വരാവുന്ന രീതിയിലുള്ളതായിട്ടുള്ള വർക്ക് അതിൽ മെനഞ്ഞെടുത്ത് വീണ്ടും കഴുകി വൃത്തിയാക്കി.
Okay, I'm going to stop this video here. Go back to Okay, anyway, this is what he is basically doing. The point here is that the very critical step is to actually make the holes. They are made based on experience. There is no real science to it. And then if they start with about 100 bamboo pieces, typically they'll get 15 to 20 pitch perfect flutes that they can actually sell. So the yield is pretty low. Okay, so now I'm going to go on to this section here, and I think I'm running a little bit behind. I hope I can complete this in the next 5 to 10 minutes. But anyway, this is how the flute is structured. There are 8 holes, and the main point I wanted to call out here is that when you play, the sa here is the first 2 holes closed, then your re is the first hole closed, and the main takeaway on this is that these are all complete hole closures. So if I close this, there's no partial hole closing, and I'll come to that in the next slide. But the idea here is that when I play the first 2 holes closed, I get the sa. Then when I open the first hole, I get the upper re. And so these notes are what you get when you have complete hole opening or closing. And this actually turns out to be the Harikambodhi scale. And these are the notes of the Harikambodhi scale. Now in the next one, and again, I'll show you when I play the flute. In the next one, I have actually illustrated all the half notes. So your re here this is your sa, but I'm opening partially here for a re. And this is actually your Sudra Shabam, or the first re. This is your first ga. This is actually your upper ma. In the previous one, it was the lower ma. So this raga is basically as hard as it can get on the flute because everything requires partial hole opening or closing. And this is actually the Shubhapantavarali scale, I believe. And then if you lower the ma, it actually gives you Denuka. So just to give you an idea that there's partial hole closing involved for some of these notes. So with that, any questions so far? I'm going to move on now and close the slides and move on to a demo of the actual flute.
You're fine. It's wonderful.
All right. So thank you. So I'll move on now. So I have some notes here, but I don't need you to, this is actually, I'm going to turn off the PowerPoint and turn on my video. Okay. So I don't need to screen share anymore, right?
Correct.
Can you see my video?
Yes.
Okay. So as I said earlier, the flute, one side is closed. As you can see here, this is a natural node of the bamboo that's closed here. This side is open. There are 8 holes, and then this is the blowing hole. This metal thing is something that I have put here because the flute started cracking. I had to arrest the crack. So this is actually something that you put on your plumbing at home. So this is just something I bought in a hardware store, and I have clamped it so that the crack doesn't propagate anymore. Okay. So this actually is a 2.5 pitch. 2.5 pitch means that when I play the sa, that's your D sharp in the Western scale. I also have a G scale flute. In this case, sa will be D. This is actually Nal Kattai or 4. I don't know if pitch is the right word, but Nal Kattai flute. So I also have a bass flute. I don't know exactly what the nomenclature, the designation of the Shruti is on this one, but as you can see, this is actually lower. So as the flute becomes longer, the bass and you get a bass flute.
Your voice is cutting out.
So there are
Yeah,
some
there we
bass
go.
flutes that are much longer. Are you able to hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. So as I was saying, was the length and the tone depends on the length, the circumference of the bamboo, and then also on the thickness. The thickness here is usually a couple of millimeters. That also determines the pitch of the flute. Okay. Now, so the Harikambodi, the reason I brought up Harikambodi there was because that's the easiest one. Normally, a student will start with a 2.5 or a 2 flute for 2 reasons. One, it's actually very reasonable in size. Second thing is the holes are more comfortably placed for a beginner. If you go to a long flute, you have to stretch. You see here, they have to stretch, and these are not very easy to play. And so they don't usually start with anything longer than about 20 inches or so. And that's what this is. Very comfortable to hold. And then I also talked about the parallel fingering versus the cross fingering and the holding technique, right? Earlier, and even now, you'll see a lot of light music exponents, and then people who play Hindustani music also, a lot of flute players actually still hold it this way. So the problem I find with holding like this, and this is also called the parallel holding. You can see the fingers are parallel to each other. This holding technique also requires you to support it with your lip. Otherwise, it's very difficult to hold it and actually move your fingers freely. So the technique that Mali actually pioneered was called the parrot clutch technique. So you hold it like this. So I can actually freely move my fingers, and I don't really have to rely on my lip support or my mouth support to hold it and play anything I want. Okay. So let's go back to this Harikambodi scale. Right. So first 2 holes closed. The
Audio got cut out again. There we go. Come closer.
oh, the upper octaves is same as the lower in terms of tone. Can you any better?
Yeah, much better.
Maybe there's an optimum distance here that I need to stand at. Okay, so I'll stay there. So because when I come closer to show the flute, I think it seems to disrupt. If it's better now, I'll continue. So the upper octave sa is the same position as the lower octave sa. It's just that you blow harder. And same with the other notes as well. So it's your lower sa. So as we go, I'm just lowering my intensity of the blowing to produce the lower octave. And then overall in the flute, you can have about 2 octaves. I've seen on the internet that you can do 2.5. I don't know how that is actually true, but I can go from the lower pa to the uppermost pa. Sorry. The upper pa is very hard to get, just out of practice, but basically the same position, same fingering position as the sa gives me the lower sa, the next octave sa, and with more intense blowing, it gives me the fifth above, which is actually the pa. Okay. The physics behind is that you got the first harmonic is produced when you blow gently. When you blow a little harder, the second harmonic actually drowns out the first harmonic, which is 1 octave higher. And then finally, when you actually blow even harder, your third harmonic predominates your first and second. They're also playing in the their undertones, but you don't hear them. You only hear the third harmonic, which is actually the upper pa. Okay. So all right, I know I'm actually running out of time here. So let me quickly take a few more minutes here. Kala?
No
The
problem.
half notes, there are 2 ways of playing the half notes. So one is by sliding the finger to the side. This is a Maya model. So that's one way of sliding your fingers to produce the half note of the Shuddha Rishabha. Okay. There are a few other techniques I have here. Kala, do you want me to continue, or do you think we should
I think you can take like
pause?
another 5 minutes, and then
Okay.
we'll continue with what Yvette has.
Okay. Sorry, Yvette.
No, no, actually, mine is really short. So you keep going because this is fascinating to me. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. So next, I'm actually going to show the Gamakas now with the Harikamboli, which we played flat. So this is how it goes. So in this case,
Your audio is cutting out. Step back.
so that is with the Gamakas, and that is all the flat notes. So one technique that is used for these Gamakas, at least in the flute, is when you have a note, you oscillate between the upper note and the lower note below that, and that gives you, for example, here. So here I'm playing Sagari Gari. So basically, you're actually not exactly just playing that note flat, but you're just going up and down the surrounding notes. Then I was telling you about this technique of sliding the finger to produce the half note. With some situations, you just tap on the hole with half the note open. So this. I'm going to play the Sankaravaranam scale, which we have heard about, or we've actually seen that quite a lot in our other talks. Sorry, let me start that over. So here I just tap it.
step back when you speak, Ranga. Your audio keeps cutting out. Yeah. Your flute is fine. Your voice doesn't come. That's all.
Okay. One other thing about the flute is because you have, when you go from ga to ma or from ma to pa, there's a little transition if you notice, right? So I play. So between ga and ma, this is all open, this is all closed. So when you have to go in a smooth fashion from ga to ma, sometimes that is actually a problem. There are a lot of ragas where this continuity is very important. And one of the examples is Vasanta. So for Vasanta, so Arohanam, the scale goes like this. So the ga and ma are very close there. And the way I was telling you earlier, the way we play ga on this one is this: we just tap the finger here to get that effect. So you see here, my ma is already closed because I need to go closely between ga and ma, and I need to multiple times I have to actually stay close to ga and ma. So that's how this is played. Okay. Okay. The last thing I want to show you here is, as I was saying, sometimes you just oscillate between the upper and lower notes to produce the half note. So example here is Kannada. So here the So here the re is small and the re is small. So, but I never actually play the actual re note at all. So sorry, ga is small. So I never actually play the ga note. So I play ga oscillating between the re and the upper ga. So that I'm actually playing da and the sa. I'm actually playing the da note. So that is another, I've been randomly giving you a few of these techniques that I use with my limited exposure. So I think I would wrap up there. There are a couple of things that I had, but I think at this point I'll wrap up. Any questions?